You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, the draft has come and gone. A little bit of football action, something to watch. It was different, virtual. We got through it. I think there were some good things that we saw happen, some bad things that we saw happen. First and foremost, Mr. Harris, what's going on? Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight.
All is well for the most part in Albuquerque, relatively speaking, given the circumstances. No complaints here on the home front. I'm locked in the bunker as always. Again, feeling a little guilty that my life is impacted about 0.5% by all this. So feeling for everybody out there who's dealing with hard time. Realize a lot of you don't have jobs. Realize some of you have essential jobs you wish you didn't have. Man, it's just hopefully we can grind on through this. And hopefully a little bit of football gives you a little bit of relief. And that's what I thought the draft did pretty well. Kyle, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. The draft, I was shocked how little of a hitch there was with it. And it was fun, the Bill Belichick dog, just some good content. Like, honestly, I think that's, I'm surprised that the NFL hasn't leaned into not only the coaches, but just most players, like the human side of them. That's what I really enjoyed about it. Like, people love the mic'd up stuff, just hearing players talk to each other in game, all that. We don't get a ton of that content. So that was, it was good. It was really good.
There's a word you use there, human. And, Bill Belichick clearly trolling us all with, Nike the dog sitting there, and eating his treats, making the pigs, doing whatever. But the Vrabel, household, most interesting of all, the Cliff Kingsbury, super cool, Sean McVay trying to keep up and not quite getting there. And look, Justin, let me ask you this. I was pretty sure Roger Goodell was a robot created by the owners, a mechanical creature unable to show any true emotion, feeling, or humanity. I think he changed my mind. Did he change yours?
No, he didn't. No, he's not well liked in this area. Basically contingent on the relationship and the treatment of Tom Brady over the last 10, 15 years. I think he's a overpaid, pompous, to be honest with you, in his decision making. But in fact, there's a funny story out here. One of his biggest trolls and one of Kyle's favorite companies in Barstool Sports. I think David Portnoy, the owner, gets to go to his house, won a bid, and actually sit and watch a football game with him. That should be interesting, like arch enemies. So,
Portnoy gets kicked out of this. He got kicked out of the last Super Bowl, didn't he?
Yeah. So that there was some type of charity, and Portnoy was like, I'm sure you saw it, and I'm quite annoyed. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I'm not. Roger. It's been Roger's way, and we've seen some of these players get harsher discipline than others, and I don't think he's a fair man, and I certainly don't think he's human.
Said the Patriots fan. So I thought, just as a general observer of these things, I thought he did come off. I thought he improved his standing in general, probably with the average non-Patriot fan or with the average non-fan of anything, because I don't really like any of these teams. But I love football. Don't get me wrong, but right. I hate all the teams equally. So I did think that, he came off, the dressing down over the course of time. He just seemed like a real person. Also, I just thought that, in general, the technology worked brilliantly. You would expect some more glitches. I think as fantasy owners, we were all waiting for that first guy to say, hey, can we roll the clock back?
Mm-hmm.
Can we roll the draft back 4 or 5 picks? And there was none of that. The trades came off without a hitch. So in general, I was pretty impressed with the actual, just the way it came off. And look, next year it'll be in Cleveland. We'll all come up and stay in Kyle's bunk beds.
Sure.
Before the big party. And look, the NFL likes to do things up in a big way. They aren't going to stick with this. But I think going forward, we're going to see a lot of changes to how every business handles, some of the things, some of their expenses that turned out not necessarily to need to be expenses. Maybe we'll see some of that with the NFL and I'm kind of curious to see how it plays out. I thought it was great. Still the only game in town, a very highly rated draft program. We're going to dig into the actual, players picked from a fantasy perspective here, but there were a few, newsy items of note since we last recorded, not the least of which would be Rob Gronkowski's unretirement. I can even speak at times. So let me just say this. He joins Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. The trade happened. It's like, I don't know. Justin probably predicted this at some point. So I'll just go out here and say, 50, 600 yards, 5 TDs. Fight me.
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, and that would, I think that he's going to fall into the sea of mediocrity. And I think 50 receptions, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns is just like okay in the sea of mediocrity. Right now, he's a 3-1 favorite to win the comeback player of the year. He did it in 2014, so he's no stranger to the award. But, winning that award would probably require you to be hurt in the previous year. And that's something that Rob Gronk's been good at. So, it's not hard to be a tight end 1 in fantasy land. We saw Jason Witten do it last year in Dallas. He's going to be fine. But no longer are we paying the round 1 Gronk premium that goes to Kelsey or it's Kittle, and Mark Andrews has come up quite a bit too. So I think he's going to be fine. They did not address tight end in the draft. There's been some skepticism about O.J. Howard and Bruce Arians, how he feels about him. I think what we saw Howard do at Alabama was really good. So I want to say I'd like to see more of O.J. Howard, but it's crowded there. A lot of mouths to feed in Tampa Bay. Unclear rapport as well. We know that Brady has a rapport with Gronk. So and that's the only rapport he really has with any of those players. So I think it's asking a lot for Gronkowski to come back and be the man that he once was. So I think he'll be just fine, though, if he's conditioned himself, which I think he has.
So, assuming Brady doesn't get arrested for going out in the park or breaking into people's houses or showing up at his offensive coordinator's house to share a playbook, just in general Tom Brady cheating. I'm not into all that, right. But I just had to. But, Kyle, all that notwithstanding, I think Justin makes a rare good point here. The chemistry you're welcome. The chemistry with this receiving core. Look, we love Chris Godwin. We love Mike Evans. Gronk comes in. O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate still there. Scott Miller. I know one of your favorite guys. You're big on the slot.
Dude, they have so many like classic Twitter data darlings from Scotty Miller, Justin Watson. They got Tyler Johnson. Dude, they have everybody, but like not all of them can work out now.
So yeah, they can't work out. Although, are we not expecting at some point we're going to start seeing Instagram videos from Tom Brady's secret bunker in Montana or somewhere where they can all load up in the van and head out there somewhere. But I think in part, Gronk, one of the reasons I think Gronk's presence is helpful is he can show those guys the Patriot way or the Brady way. And by that I mean being where Tom Brady wants you to be when he wants you to be there. If you're not that. Not part of the deal. So, Kyle, what are your expectations? Let's start with the top two, the Godwin and Evans. Does Gronk change that equation at all for you? For any of these guys, does Gronk change the equation? Not a tight end, but any of the wideouts.
Yeah, I don't know, the wideouts aren't really changed to me by Gronk much, if at all. Because I think what you were getting at is that he is. Maybe this isn't exactly what you were saying, but combined with everything you said, he's probably more of a locker room presence than he is like a real fantasy factor at this point, and more of a nuisance when he's stealing touchdowns from like Mike Evans in the red zone. But that's kind of unpredictable, and the targets he's going to see are more of what's predictable, and I don't predict them to be that many. I think more of what's concerning is how is Mike Evans specifically going to do with that super high ADOT relative to Brady for years now, throwing these low crossing type of routes. The thing is, Brady's actually been pretty fine in the past years as a deep passer. He just doesn't do it very much. So that is sort of the one shining ray of hope for Mike Evans drafters, is that it's just he hasn't really needed to or hasn't had the weapons to. Like, what deep threats has he had?
Think back to one game with Antonio Brown against Miami. Granted, a very generous defense, but it seemed pretty natural to me to fling it down the field to one Antonio Brown. So that'll be something we watch. Also, one of the, I thought, the more disappointing running back picks we'll dig into when we get to the rookies, Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, thought we would get somebody higher end going to Tampa, but we did not. So we'll see what your opinions are of that fellow and the other running backs in this class here in a moment. I did want to talk about a couple other things that have happened just as we were heading in to record this pod this week. Frank Gore signed with the Jets. This comes on the heels of an interview with Adam Gase just a few days ago with ESPN. ESPN's Rich Cimini that suggesting that we want to lighten his workload a little bit. And I get that. It was pretty heavy last year. It also wasn't very productive last year. So it seems like this just adds maybe Kyle a little bit to the Adam Gase. Can't stand the fact that Le'Veon Bell is on his team. He goes to Frank Gore, the 1,000-year-old Frank Gore, or 37-year-old Frank Gore, or whatever he is, who fared reasonably well under Gase in Miami, more so than other players have. I kind of have viewed Le'Veon Bell as a pretty locked-in, clear path to workload running back too. Nothing they did in the draft notwithstanding. They did have some offensive line help and some playmakers down the field. How far does this take Bell out of that running back 2 category for you?
I mean, no, it would still leave him in that running back 2 category, and I mean, ADP is subject to change throughout the summer, but I still just can't get over the fact that they have a bad offense. I don't want players on a bad offense, and nothing Sam Darnold has really shown over the course of his 2 years, a bit truncated 2 years, has led me to believe that he is going to be a prolific or even really above average passer. So, and Adam Gase is a very uncreative kind of your old school type of offensive mind in general. So for me, I just don't want to invest in this offense. This didn't change that at all because I wasn't really going to invest in him anyways. But it doesn't help, I'll tell you that much, because we've seen Frank Gore in the past take 150 plus carries away from Carlos Hyde, Marlon Mack, Kenyon Drake, and Devin Singletary. Yeah,
I saw that last year.
Incredible.
Justin, I like to call you the Adam Gase of fantasy football. Not really.
That's horrible. No. That's probably the worst thing you've ever said to me.
That might be the worst thing I've said to anybody.
I'm going to write that down.
You should remember this day.
Awful.
I apologize fully.
See tacos floating everywhere.
Gase, one of the things Gase said it was maybe they'd work on some more stretch plays. They did add some help on the offensive line and free agency and in the draft, the first round of the draft, getting a pretty athletic tackle. So what do you think? Is Bell a guy that you would feel confident in, or are you just bummed out that Adam Gase can't figure out how to use the real talent when he gets it?
I think the offensive line has struggled. We've seen that. I think what we saw of vintage Le'Veon Bell, he was spoiled in Pittsburgh with a top 5 offensive line, and he lived on the field. I think the numbers were skewed a little bit given the offense that he was on with Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger in his prime. They were good Pittsburgh Steelers offenses, and then he's got a little dose of reality coming to the Jets. Below mediocre offensive line, bad offense. Sam Darnold is developing, not a lot of talent there. Didn't work out with Robbie Anderson. But, we talk about volume all the time, and I don't think Frank Gore is going to cut into him at 36 years old. They did go out and draft Michael Pirine out of Florida, round 4. Who knows? But Le'Veon Bell is still relatively young. I think we can squeeze another year or 2 out of him potentially. And tonight, I would think that he's going to have around 250 touches. I mean, he's not dead. And so, he just won't have 250 more than the next closest guy. That's right. On the team. And I kind of agree with that. And I think hopefully this creates a little bit of value, maybe drops the price a wee bit. And I think that's a lot of times we hope. Okay, so we had some quarterback news as well, some backups, but I think maybe of some interest would be Jameis Winston signing with the New Orleans Saints, 1-year deal, very cheap, base salary, some incentives. Just basically seems to me, Kyle, this keeps the status quo there. Taysom Hill will continue to be the Swiss Army knife. Drew Brees, if he gets hurt or something happens, Jameis Winston comes in. But I thought it was interesting that Jameis Winston said basically, the cheap deal he took is like paying his tuition. He called it the Harvard of football. How do you think he can rebound, get his career back on track? Teddy Bridgewater his way back into relevancy after a year in New Orleans?
Yeah, so I think he can get his way back into relevancy. I don't really believe it will change who he is as a passer. Like it's what he's been going back to days at Florida State. And we don't really see players like wildly change who they are. They are who they are. If they are good, sometimes they improve and get better. But like he's not going to become a conservative thrower. He's still going to be who he's always been. But I do think it can get him back in fantasy relevancy in the way that it's just good for the Jameis Winston brand to do what he is doing. Like we saw with Teddy Bridgewater. And I'm happy about that because I always want to see more Jameis Winston. He's fun if he's not that good. So, I think it can be good for his career, but for him, like, literally as a passer, I don't think it'll be a modest improvement if he gets a starting job next, 2 seasons from now, I guess.
Adam Lonero. Justin Lonero. Is Taysom Hill, do you think he's the quarterback of the future in New Orleans? I mean, they've hinted at that. Sean Payton has suggested, he's a Steve Young, both running and passing the football. Can you see that ever happening?
I listened to, Bucky Brooks the other day, and by all accounts, it looks like Taysom Hill is the quarterback of the future to follow up the Hall of Fame career of Drew Brees tonight. I mean, you use the word Swiss Army knife, and I think that's perfect. I think we're going to see more players have that role. Now, there's not enough data to say that Taysom Hill is going to be good. We know that he's getting front row seats at one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Drew Brees. Would I take Hill tonight over Jameis Winston? Absolutely. I think Winston is getting another heavy dose of reality and come back to earth, young man, and his poor decision making. Jameis Winston has a mountain to climb, I think, to get back, into, like Kyle said, when he's bad, we love him. We have sick minds in fantasy football because in spite of his 30 picks last year, he was still pretty damn good as a fantasy quarterback. But it's going to take a Breeze injury, and it's probably going to take a Taysom Hill injury for Winston to see the field in New Orleans. So, it might be a year or two. I think he's pissed his opportunity away, and that was an extended leash in Tampa Bay, and all the weapons around him just has that. He doesn't make smart decisions often. In the NFL, you have to be more efficient than inefficient, right? I sound like Booger McFarlane here, but that's the harsh reality. That's the harsh reality of it. And when you can't, be successful, and granted, these Bucs teams have had struggling backfields, poor offensive lines. He's had the weapons around him, and I think 30 picks at the NFL level is unacceptable, and we've seen it time and time again. Poor decision after poor decision. So he's got a mountain to climb. I think character has been an issue off the field, and I think this should be a wake-up call for him.
Been quite a while since his character was an issue off the field, but I guess to sum up, we'll go with the Emmitt Smith summation. That leopard is not going to change his stripes when it comes to Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. My dynasty shares, I should still be happy. I do think Sean Payton maybe has some things up his sleeve down the road. It's just the kind of chess piece he likes to create the mismatches. Andy Dalton goes to the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of buzz, New England, the Jaguars, a lot of the connection there to Jay Gruden, the Jarrett Stidham, questions floating around. Could he use a veteran around him? Apparently the Dallas Cowboys are going to the big backup route. Kyle, is this an attempt to give them any form of leverage whatsoever in the Dak Prescott, or maybe just a skosh of insurance instead, and he's just a solid backup, and not everyone has one of those?
Yeah, I would say probably the latter, and if it's the former, it's not going to work, because like we saw last year, Dak is at his peak, he is a Russell Wilson level efficient player, and now they have surrounded him with weapons to let him sustain that peak. If he plays as well as he did last year with better weapons, it's going to be lights out for any sort of cheap deal they expected to get, any sort of non-mega contract they expected to get with him. And every team should have a backup that is every team should be striving to get a good backup, because we've seen how important it can be. Even if your starter's just out a handful of games, that can be the difference between making the playoffs or not. Or like with the Eagles, it can be the difference between winning Super Bowl or not. So I think it's smart on them just to get a cheap, above average backup.
Justin, as I was watching the draft and I saw Nike eating a treat from Bill Belichick's hand, I also noticed on his tablet in front of him there was the Pro Football Reference page open to Cam Newton. Should we read anything into that? Okay, I just made all that up. What about Cam Newton? What's going to happen to Cam?
I think he's a confident guy. I still think there's a chance he could come here. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, it would make a little sense, but they're just beyond fiscally savvy here. And I said this weeks ago when I talked to you guys, maybe a couple of months ago, that Jarrett Stidham's probably going to be a starter week one, probably a long-term investment. I think Bill knows what he can do with the Matt Castles of the world. We've seen it with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a mastermind, and under $1 million, I think, for Stidham. Let his rookie contract, end, and then see where we go. But Newton seems like a proud guy, and I think that he probably doesn't want to take a back seat like Winston is, or he's going to sit around and wait for an injury to occur. And injuries do occur, as we know, and kind of slide in, reinvent himself elsewhere. But I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I know that finances are, of a concern in terms of grabbing Cam Newton, but we've seen crazier things happen. And who knows with Bob Kraft. I think a more interesting story, we'll talk about this later, would be like an Aaron Rodgers coming to New England. But tonight doesn't look good. And if Cam Newton saved his pennies, who cares? Just be in quarantine like the rest of us.
Yeah, I think at some point, Cam, Ron Rivera addressed the issue, and I think he also addressed the issue and just maybe said, circumstances would dictate. I think the issue was settled when they went with Kyle Allen instead of Cam Newton.
Right.
When they brought a Carolina quarterback along with them. So anyway, that's something we'll be watching in the coming weeks. Let's dig into the rookie class. We'll start with Kyle. Top three rookie running backs for you based on landing spot, skill set, etc. Rank them.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire 1, Jonathan Taylor 2, and J.K. Dobbins 3.
Dobbins, maybe a little longer term look there, but maybe the guy in the best position over the long term in your estimation?
Yeah, I think I would still say being on the same offense as Patrick Mahomes is the best long-term situation, but Lamar Jackson's the second best. And if he is as good as he is built and as they draft, like the draft capital indicate, I don't see why it couldn't be a Miles Sanders situation where just every time he touches the field, he is efficient and eventually circumstances will arise to get him the requisite amount of volume. But it is I would say at least like a second half of the season play. I'm not expecting him to have the same role as the other two guys I mentioned week one.
Baltimore Ravens ran for 3,300 yards last year. Worth noting, Justin, your top three rookie running backs.
I'm with Kyle. I mean, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the play. I think Andy Reid has got his new Brian Westbrook, if you will. Led the country in targets, and this is a kid that can do it all, and it's scary. I mean, Damian Williams is going to have a role, right? But I see no reason why.
Not for long.
not for long. And 60, 70 receptions. And as fantasy owners, we're going to want a piece of this Chiefs offense, right? So we can't get Kelsey. We can't get the Cheetah and Patrick Mahomes. And I think you want to have this kid. I mean, he could probably have 60, 70 receptions. I think Dobbins is right underneath him. We know what the Ravens do. That's run the football. Mark Ingram's 31 years old. He's going to be 31 years old. I think they have found their grinder in J.K. Dobbins. So I think that's going to happen pretty quick as well. I mean, as far as Jonathan Taylor goes, I'm a Marlon Mack truther. I guess I've hung on too long. I think Taylor could do a little more, but Mack's been fine. So it's kind of interesting with Nyheim Hines still there. I'm hesitant on Taylor. I'm hearing people think that he's going to rush for over 1,000 yards. I think that's crazy. I'm two of the last three guys, and I'll talk about it. It's going to be an intriguing player would be DeAndre Swift, where they moved up to draft Kerryon Johnson with the Lions. I'm curious about that pick. He can do more, and I think they're nervous about what Kerryon Johnson's litany of health concerns. So they grab Swift. I think Swift, but the thing about Lions running backs is Barry Sanders has set a curse, and nobody can, even come close to replicating what he did. So I'm hesitant when I grab Lions running backs. And I think that the last guy that I'll talk about is Cam Akers. We talk about opportunity at length on this show, and I think if opportunity presents itself, quickly, it's right here in Cam Akers. Out goes Todd Gurley, in comes Cam Akers. In terms of a volume standpoint, I think that they like him more than Henderson. The only issue with the Rams situation is PFF had him graded at 31 in terms of their offensive line. And somebody told me one time, I think it was you, probably 100 times, that offensive lines matter. So if the offensive line isn't getting push, then, Cam Akers can get the ball a ton, and we like him as a player. But if the offensive line sucks, it's not going to translate at all. So Dobbins, Edwards-Helaire, I'm right there, and then probably Akers and Swift. But look, from everybody who's talked to, and I don't know your take on Jonathan Taylor, Mr. Harris, and I'm curious to hear it. I mean, what do you think of what this Jonathan Taylor ad where Marlon Mack is like, hey, this guy's been okay when he's been on the field. What are we doing here? We just, it's a copycat league. Everybody wants to carry numerous backs. I get it. And that's what the Colts do as well. But I mean, can Taylor really rush for 1,000 yards from Jump Street?
Size, speed, breakaway ability. I think he's the guy that's going to take over that role sooner rather than later. Road grading offensive line and an offense that's designed to run the ball. We'll see a little Marlon Mack, but it'll be a decreasing amount of Marlon Mack as the season wears on. I like Taylor at number 2, Edwards-Helaire because of the role. And Dobbins, I think, is in a good spot. I might go Akers over him in the shorter term, but Dobbins in the longer term is great. A couple other guys going in the first few rounds that are of interest. A.J. Dillon goes to the Packers, and Aaron Jones owners, and Aaron Rodgers went, what? I thought that was interesting. Look, we all knew there was going to be some regression there for Aaron Jones. We'll see if it's a little more, maybe not. But some of these moves seem to me to be, for the future, as we're seeing guys in the final year of their contract. One of them being Aaron Jones, and Darrington Evans went to Tennessee, where they have Derrick Henry on his franchise tag. So interesting things there. Just both of you, real quick though. Keyshawn Vaughn. Were you kind of disappointed that's the direction the Bucs went?
I'm not. I think he could do it. I mean, they're another team just plagued with issues at running back. It seems like since Doug Martin. I don't think that Bruce Arians has given up on Ronald Jones, and I think they would be premature too. So what do? You go out, you grab Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt round 3. Is he a jack of all trades? No. But I think that he can help out Jones from a volume standpoint. They have the weaponry there. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. I don't know if they're going to be committed to the run a ton, but we're going to see a better year from Ronald Jones. This might be a little push or kick in his pants to get better. And I think the jury's still out on Ronald Jones. I like Keyshawn Vaughn. And I'm interested to see what I think we can steal him in fantasy leagues, and he's certainly a dynasty ad.
I see him going too high for my blood. I don't like the landing spot. You mentioned he's not a jack of all trades, nor was he very productive in college. Kyle, why am I stupid for saying that?
No, I'm kind of on board with you, just in the sense that like older rookies coming into the league, like you want to be these young 20, 21, 20. That's kind of the cutoff where you really want to get into the league by then. That's how a good way of predicting success. He's an older declare. He goes into a position where, I think Ronald Jones has some value as a running back. I don't think he is their back of the future, but he'll still get carries. I think he's probably just a committee back, and I'm not even convinced this offense is going to be great. Like the way Brady wants to play is this sort of slowed down pace. Like he just wants to win a war of attrition. So I'm not awfully excited about him, and people are way more excited about him than I am. So that's I'm out on him for sure.
Right. So, and we'll just throw in Zach Moss, a guy that, seems like a Frank Gore-sized peg to fit in that hole that's left there alongside Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary, I don't think this changes a hell of a lot for him. There was some talk that, we think he could have a little featured role, but we'd rather he's not, and now he's not. So that's going to be kind of a bit of a split. I want to ask both of you, though, outside, as we got into let's say at round 4 or later, give me the sleeper, the guy that you must have on all your dynasty leagues. I'll start with you, Justin.
Well, you mentioned I had 2 names. You had Evans drafted, right? Did he go round?
He was round 3.
All right. So you want round 4 or later. All right. I have Evans listed, and I think it makes perfect sense.
I mean, I would take that. It was, because we kind of like to give you a little leeway because you struggle with this stuff sometimes. So we'll take this one. Go ahead.
He's fine. Change of speed. I think the question is, how much usage can Derrick Henry withstand at this point in time? And I think this makes perfect sense. I mean, you're not getting vintage Deion Lewis anymore. I like the Evans ad for certain. I also like Anthony McFarland in Pittsburgh for certain. James Conner is atop the depth chart tonight. I mentioned Anthony McFarland a couple of weeks ago. I think he's right there. The only issue is Jalen Samuel is still there. gentlemen, we're seeing more and more and more committees. And as we're seeing more and more committees, it's harder to sift through where the usage is going to go. So it's going to be McFarland for me. I do like Evans, speedier guy. We know Derrick Henry's role non-existent in the passing game. I think that, the Tennessee Titans are going to make a push. They're going to have to score a ton of points. I don't know that Derrick Henry can continue this clip. I mean, he's a human. We talk about running backs wearing down all the time.
It's the money for me. Are they going to want to keep paying him? And endlessly impressed that you only went 5 deep on the 3 and only 2 deep on the 1. Mm-hmm. Well done. That's your driving right down my lane. Kyle, your favorite pick after round 4. I am the only person here who's allowed to get 10 guys in his top 3. Go ahead, right. Kyle. Who's your guy outside the top 4?
Yeah, for me it was DJ.
Or in round 4 later.
Yeah, for me it was DJ Dallas, and it simply goes to Seattle. It's simply because he is I didn't care for him as a prospect. I honestly probably didn't think about him much, if at all. But he could have a role from week 1, given that, one, he has a pretty solid all-purpose skill set. He had 14 receptions in his final season, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's just because he wasn't that's part of his skill set that he didn't get used a ton. So when you compare it to his overall touches, it's actually a decent amount. He only saw 115 carries, and he was a kick returner. He was a very talented kick returner and punt returner. He has special teams utility, so there's a decent chance he makes I think his odds of making the roster are much better because of those things. And it looks like they could very easily be without Rashad Penny. And we saw how mediocre the cavalcade of backs they have behind Chris Carson are. It's just the price you have to pay to get him compared to the upside that if Chris Carson gets hurt, he could be the backup from week 1. So it's it's just simple price.
Carson's coming off the cracked hip, and all indications are he's going to be ready. I don't like that Marshawn Lynch is out there saying his agent is talking to the Seahawks. Take a seat, Marshawn. It's over. I'm going to go ahead and go with Joshua Kelly, UCLA. I liked him going into the draft, drafted him in some dynasty leagues that I'm in that draft before the draft. Yes, that happens, people. Don't ask me why. But I love his landing spot. And Justin Jackson, it was nice knowing you. Get the hell out of his way. This is a great situation for a guy coming in. Austin Eckler, as we know, not necessarily the true feature kind of back. I think they'd like to continue to use him in the timeshare. So I think Joshua Kelly lands in a good spot. I like McFarland as well, too. I like all these guys. And Eno Benjamin. Are we sure Kenyon Drake's that good?
Round 7. Round 7.
Yeah. So I think there are some interesting running backs late round if you're in the dynasty thing. And look, we're scratching the surface here, people. Got a lot of ground to cover, but we will over the course of the long off-season, the virtual off-season programs, we will virtually assess more of these guys as we get virtual assessments of them from their coaches. Let's move on to wide receiver, where Kyle, I'll ask you to give me no more than 5 of your top 3 wide receivers.
So I'll keep it to 3. I swear I will keep it to 3. My number 1, I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at a ton of ADP. For me, it's Jalen Reagor. I just figure that, one, he has the athleticism to just make an impact day one, sort of the same way. And people kind of comped him to stylistically in the sense of he might not have a complete route tree, but he's an incredible athlete. DK Metcalf, the way we saw him come in and win on 1 to 2 routes in his first few weeks and slowly progress throughout the year. I think Reagor has that sort of same potential, and he is paired with a quarterback in Carson Wentz who could bring out that potential from him. So he's my number 1 because of opportunity, and I still think he's very talented. That goes without saying. Number 2, CeeDee Lamb. I don't know how I feel about the landing spot because, like I said, I really do think Dak has the potential to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league like we saw last year. I think that is sustainable for him because he was a talented prospect and he's shown nothing other than that for the most part. So I like the offense he'll be on. I think his production could be sporadic, but I don't know. I just have I like this offense. I like him as a talent. I'm not going to worry too much about how the targets end up working out. Kind of like A.J. Brown last year. If you liked him a lot, you just kind of ignored the fact that he wasn't on the best offense or that he had Corey Davis in front of him. You bet on talent, and talent wins out more often, at least at receiver, than running back. Running back is more about opportunity, in my opinion. And then third, I'll go with Justin Jefferson. I have a top 2 tier for me. It's those 2 guys, Jalen Reagor at 1, CD at 2. After that, I didn't like Henry Ruggs as a prospect. So I'm going to be locked in on that one for a while. Justin Jefferson, I loved as a prospect. They need a second receiver. He could be the guy. And I can't for the life of me imagine. It's like Tajay Sharp, Olabisi Johnson. I don't even know who else they would have.
Right.
So I am slotting him in at the number 2 spot there pretty quickly into the season, if not from week 1.
I would agree with that. So, Justin, 37 wide receivers were drafted. How many can you fit in the top 3?
I can fit 3. And I'm going to start off with Jerry Jeudy is probably the guy, I think, pound for pound. He's probably a modern day Antonio Brown. We've seen something to complement Cortland Sutton there. John Elway went out, drafted him. I think the realization that, look, we're gonna have to play the Kansas City Chiefs twice a year. If we are gonna compete like we used to, seemed like forever ago, we're gonna have to get our offense going. So what do? They go out, bump up their already sound running game, I thought, with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, and they get Melvin Gordon. Judy's the guy for me. I would agree with Justin Jefferson. I think out goes Stephon Diggs, in comes Justin Jefferson. Doesn't matter where he lines up. I think right off the bat, the opportunity is there for Jefferson on a Vikings team that needs another pass catcher. So again, we speak of opportunity. I think it immediately for Justin Jefferson. And I'm going to go with Michael Pittman. I don't talk about a lot of these guys, but I think Pittman for Phillip Rivers gives him that 2020 version of Mike Williams that he had in San Diego or with the Chargers, and also high ADOT guy, high yak guy, and Vincent Jackson. Actually, he wasn't a high yak guy, but Vincent Jackson, that big body, 6'5" frame. I think that's where you're getting in Michael Pittman in Indianapolis, outside of T.Y. Hilton. So it's going to be Pittman. I think he's going to start week 1. Justin Jefferson, I have Judy 1, and I would agree that the jury's still out as far as Ruggs goes. But Mike Mayock loves. First of all, Mike Mayock's at the top of the game when it comes to scouting, and Al Davis loved speed. They went out and got their guy. They're another team in the AFC West that's going to need to score some points. Not sold on him. So Judy, Jefferson, Pittman for me tonight. Immediate roles.
Yeah, Mark Davis, the only guy who's coming out of the quarantine with better hair than he went in with. Wow, impressive move by him. So you guys have hit on 6 of my top 3, so I'll give you the other 3 in my top 3. That makes it 9 altogether.
Mm-hmm.
No, I like Pittman as well. Love the landing spot an awful lot. I think T. Higgins a chance to grow with Joe Burrow is a great thing. And just I'll make note of Denzel Mims, the slide. Seems like a really talented player who fell into a good spot, especially if you don't believe Rashad Perriman's going to move into that playmaking role. And you've got to believe that Sam Darnold's going to progress at some point. So a lot of guys I like there. I thought, just to touch on a couple things before we get into our our favorite outlier kind of guys. The Broncos, you mentioned, Jerry Jeudy, they get KJ Hamler, the speedy slot man in round 2. Albert O, they add another another capable tight end in round 4 to go with Noah Fant. So just an interesting draft. And I think the point that you made, Justin, is keeping up with the Chiefs is suddenly an important thing, right? Sure. And they went a long way in doing that. So let's look at some of the guys that you like. Maybe, Justin, we'll start with you, that fell outside of round 3 into the round 4 and later. Give me a couple names.
I mentioned Chase Claypool. I think he found a great spot, and you look at the tape on
round 2.
Yeah, I got the all right, outside. He's laughing. Yeah, he did go round 2 of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I like him as well, though. I think kind of that Ladarius Green size piece that they've wanted since Ladarius Green wasn't it. I know he was a tight end. Claypool's going to line up outside, but the same frame, same size, same kind of a weapon, right? So I agree, it's a good play. Now,
sure,
right?
No, I'm married. I'm working off my list here, and again, it was a busy day here, so I'm looking at like how deep this is with the T. Higgins of the world and the Denzel Mims. I could talk about some of these earlier guys, like. I wanted to talk about Brandon Ayuk. I thought he was another good guy that fell in a good.
Why not?
Why not? It's my show, right? We talk about opportunity. I'm looking at immediate opportunity. I thought we were going to talk about that tonight. Out goes Emmanuel Sanders. In comes Brandon Ayuk. Shades of DJ Moore, who Kyle and I love. So that's where I'm at. I don't know that you need to take. First of all, wide receiver takes a while to develop, anyways. I think it's going to take a while for 10 of these guys, including the CD Lambs of the world. And the Pittmans and the T. Higgins of the world. So I'm not going to find myself stressing immediately, because I think this is arguably or historically the deepest class of all time. So It's going to be Claypool. I find the opportunity round 2 to the Steelers. And Kyle mentioned kind of all over the place tonight. Jalen Reagor, Raw, Deshaun Jackson. That's maybe that one trick pony. I think he's got a lot of work to do. But it's a deep enough class within the first couple of rounds where I'm not finding myself, digging way outside the first 2 or 3 rounds.
Right. I do like some of the guys that come later. I'll see if Kyle likes some of the same ones. Who you got? Give me like 3 names outside the 3rd round, Kyle.
Okay, so I want to buy as much of like cheap Ravens as I can. So James Prochet, I'm just buying him as I think their receiving core is so thin. After Marquise Brown, it's guys who like should not be getting starts. Like it's like Willie Snead, the one skinny fast dude. Like some guy who sells hot dogs on Saturdays before the games.
Devin Duvernay, who is inside of round 3 guy. I think Duvernay is a good pick for them.
So yeah, I'll take
maybe Willie Snead, a better Willie Snead than Willie Snead.
Will he be used though? See, that's the thing. I mean, when you think of Baltimore, it's like, all right, Marquise Brown's going to do his thing, but I mean, this football team, they run the football. They're going to use Mark Andrews, and like outside of like Marquise Brown, do you see any relevance at all? Like.
I think it's possible, especially given that their defense was so good and they were so efficient last year as an offense that like if they regress as an offense a bit, that just means they could be potentially running more plays if they're not basically getting all of these 20, 30, 40-yard touchdowns, especially like rushing for these touchdowns, or like Mark Ingram catching 5 touchdowns is like insane. And if their defense regresses, which we've seen the best defenses regress, defense is very hard to keep sustaining year over year. So I think it's possible that their offense has to play a little more tempo, a little more pace. Might be a little, I hate to say more fun. It might be a little more fun there. So yeah, I think they're kind of long shots, but they also just don't have like your typical X receiver. They have like Mark Andrews has to play that role, but he also doesn't stay on the field every single snap. They rotate tight ends. So it seems like they have so many rotational pieces. And if I have even like a sliver of a chance to get a guy who's going to be on the field every single snap with Lamar Jackson, I'm going to do it, whether it be Duvernay or whether I be within the rules and go after round 3 and get James Prochet.
I'm going to just say here, the round 3 guys I think are all intriguing. Antonio Gibson, who will be kind of an offensive weapon for the Redskins. Play a little running back, play a little receiver, big body guy, but they'll kind of use him, in the passing attack a lot. I also like Brian Edwards going to the Raiders, Lynn Bowden. We'll see what happens with him. But all those 3rd round guys. I think after that, though, when you dig into those guys, I think Antonio Golden Gandy lands with the Redskins is the piece that they don't have. The big body, the 6'4", guy downfield. I like him an awful lot. I like Quintez Cephas, who I like going into this draft based on the inside scoop I got from Matt Waldman, who reminded me he's much faster than his combine numbers, which were 4.7, but also the comparison to Anquan Bolden that Matt Waldman came up with from the rookie scouting portfolio like that. But like most of all, the landing spot where, Marvin Jones, his future in Detroit is fairly limited, I'm saying. And I think this gives you, a guy, to work alongside Kenny Golladay for quite some time. And the guy I like an awful lot is Donovan Peoples-Jones, who went like in round 6. Great kick returner. He'll come right in right away and do that. But he's another big body, kind of gives you another guy to play outside. Less Jarvis Landry playing the slot. I think at some point he moves into that top 3 rotation. He'll be worth noting, if not drafting. But for me, he's one of the guys on the outside. Justin, do you have one guy? Do you have a wild card? Who's the guy that you think is going to come out of nowhere and wow us all?
You know what? I did have Gibson on the list, because I think the jury's out outside Terry McLaurin and Washington. I mean, when you look at some of these players, the issue here is what's going to happen at quarterback. I mean, we saw it was bad, and they were running mates at Ohio State, but the jury's out, outside Terry McLaurin. So, I tend to agree that the Skins are, they're a work in progress. They're going to finish last in the NFC East as far as I'm concerned. That's the name I had written down is Gibson. I'm all over him. He was round 3, pick 66. So give me Antonio Gibson as a shot. But again, and I'll say this, it's a class, and of course the Raiders did some things, I don't find that you have to go outside the top 10 or 12 because this class is so deep. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. So, it's a position where you don't have to dig deep enough immediately. In Dynasty, I get it with the Lynn Bowdens and the Brian Edwards, but not a ton of love because ultimately, when you look at a guy like Edwards or you look at Bowden, they're playing with Derek Carr. I mean, it's not, Marcus Mariota's there now. There's just not of a lore, and it comes down to landing spot, and it also comes down to development. And the reality is, even the top guys that we've named tonight are going to take a while to fit in. It might take a year, it might take 2 years.
And that's the point heading into the tight end class. Before I do, but look, we're going to see this is maybe a year where the running backs are the rookies don't as they usually are. But just, we're going to see these guys. They aren't getting any OTAs. They aren't getting any on-field reps. They're all doing virtual work. And some of these guys struggle, rookie receivers, to pick up their offenses under the best of circumstances. And these are not. Before we get into the tight ends, which is basically going to explain the same thing, none of these guys are going to do a damn thing this year. I want to get Kyle. Do you have one outlier other than Prost that you want to jump on here, or let's stake a claim, plant a flag?
Not really. I don't love any of, I don't think there's any crazy obvious fits where, this guy has a real potential to get in. I'll stick up again for the dude, Tyler Johnson. His receiving core is crowded, but he broke out, he has one of the youngest breakout ages you'll find. He dominated at Minnesota. He played real competition in the Big Ten. And the NFL at least has some value in him. He didn't go undrafted. So I will I'll stick with him on my deep dynasty leagues. None of these guys will see my rosters in even the deepest season long leagues though.
Right, I think this is all dynasty stuff. So that brings us to tight end, Justin. You've often told us that this is the sea of mediocrity. It got deeper, but not any better, right?
No.
Anybody on this list of rookies anywhere in this draft appeal to you?
A couple names. I would go with Adam Troutman. I do. I think the pieces are there. Drew Brees likes to use his tight ends. The opportunities there almost immediately. Again, we'll see. Time will tell. Maybe a year or two. Jared Cook is still. Jared Cook's not getting any younger. I agree.
And I think
in terms of dynasty,
maybe a little bit of a developmental project, right? So maybe he's the guy that comes on when my boy Taysom Hill gets busy. I'm with you.
In dynasty circles,
that's what we're looking at this class, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In Cole Kmet, the Bears, the Trey Burton project did not work out. I think they were in shambles, the Chicago Bears. I think that's another name to look out for in terms of investing over the next year or two. Our friend Mike Clay has told us time and time again that rookie tight ends, it doesn't work out necessarily. Or most of the time for that matter. I'll give you a tidbit here. Maybe Devin Asiasi. The Patriots drafted 2 tight ends in this draft. There is a shortage of talent on the New England Patriots if you haven't noticed. Jarrett Stidham's going to be your quarterback week 1 in my estimation. I think that he's a big freak of a target, an athlete. He's going to be raw, but Bill Belichick, drafts very calculated. This kid's got a brain in his head. This kid, how does he work out? And a lot of intangibles. So he's a dart for me because, again, the Patriots lack weaponry, in my opinion. I think that for Jarrett Stidham, middle of the field, use some of these tight ends or new pieces. There's not a lot of experience on the depth chart outside Julian Edelman.
I believe I saw Nike get a treat when Dalton Keene was picked, so perhaps that's indicative of something there as well.
Sure.
Kyle, which of these guys are you going to plant a flag on?
I'm not. They're rookie tight ends. I'm not planting a flag on any one of them.
Dynasty.
Dynasty. Give me all the Alberto. I can't. He's the one constant we see with great tight ends is no matter if they had early breakouts, late breakouts, they didn't dominate in college, they did. They are consistently all great athletes. And Albert O at 6'6", 250 something, I believe might actually be bigger, ran a 4.48 or a 4.49. That's something at the position where athleticism might matter the most. You just can't coach that. He's just so incredibly athletic. And from Kelsey to Gronk to George Kittle, all of these guys have one trait that every single one of them happens to have in common, and they are great athletes. So I don't know when the opportunity will come behind Noah Fant. Maybe it's if Drew Lock does end up being really good. It's an offense that can support a lot of weapons, even if it's sporadic scoring. I like the Adam Troutman call. It's a good position to be in, and I believe even after Drew Brees leaves, it will be just a good offense, regardless who they have under center. So I like that.
I agree with that. I agree. And I think Troutman, I was busting Justin's chops a little bit, but I believe is, not the highest level competition in high school or college, but certainly a guy that could develop into something.
That's the question.
The Saints are probably, and we've seen these kind of guys, come in, high school quarterbacks, end up tight ends in college and then kind of can develop into players. So we'll see if he does that. Well, speaking of quarterbacks, let's see, there's Joe Burrow, there's Tua Tagovailoa, there's Justin Herbert. We all know them. Bengals, Dolphins, Chargers. Tua's number 1. Can't wear that 13. And God rest old Don Shula, by the way. Rest in peace, good sir. So, look, we all know who the top 3 guys are. Let's just do a little over-under here and say, for both of you, set the over-under for games started. Joe Burrow, I think we can all probably agree it's going to be the full season, correct? Everyone good there?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so Tua, set the over-under, Kyle.
I'll set the line at, I'll say 7.5.
What say you, Justin?
I had 8, so I'm right there. I had 8.
I think that sounds pretty reasonable. Health willing, and it sounds like he is healthy. Justin Herbert went to the Chargers. Obviously, Tyrod Taylor seems like he's got the inside track to start. Justin, how long will Tyrod Taylor start for the Los Angeles Chargers?
If he stays healthy, it could be all season. I mean, I'm going to put him at 8 too. I don't know that the Chargers GM was psyched. He would have taken any of the top 3 or outside of Joe Burrow. I'm going to put it right at 8. I think he's probably the rawest package, out of the Tuas of the world. I don't think he's anything to write home about. I think 8 is a fine number, maybe less because of Tyrod Taylor historically has showed us conservative. I mean, stay healthy, dink, dunk, decent mentor, but I mean, this was a few years ago. So
hasn't always been dink dunk thing,
Well, I know
was it?
You loved him with
Buffalo,
our boy Sammy Watkins,
right? In Buffalo, and who was the offensive coordinator at that time? Anthony Lynn. It's going to be an injury. I don't know how long it's going to take. But at some point, Tyrod Taylor will get hurt. As we saw in Cleveland, it didn't take too damn long. And maybe it won't here, but I think that's going to be kind of injury dependent. And maybe Tua is to a degree as well. But I think that kind of mid-range of the season seems pretty reasonable to me. So we kind of know it, though. And again, we're going to have the entire coming months to dig into some of the fortunes and potential fortunes of these guys. But I wanted to talk about who you like as a dynasty pick. Let's say you're not getting any of those 3. I'm going to go ahead. I mean, look, we're going to talk about Jordan Love here in a second. I think he landed in a great landing spot. If you're assuming Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be around for long, we'll talk about that. Beyond that, Jalen Hurts to me landed in a lousy spot. Maybe Jacob Eason is the guy who's in the best spot here.
Yeah.
Convince me otherwise, Justin.
I'm not going to convince you otherwise. I think the end is near for Phillip Rivers, and Eason is the guy that I had. I mean, he's who better to learn behind a guy like Phillip Rivers. I know it was a terrible year last year. It was a great career for the most part as an NFL quarterback, good enough above, and we've talked at length about a need for competent QB play. I think Phillip Rivers over the course of his career has been that. So Jacob Eason sits, watches this year, and then he's already thrusted into an offense that has all the pieces, a damn good offensive line, a damn good backfield, and a cast of wide receivers. I think T.Y. Hilton's probably got he's probably on his way out the door. Eason's going to get the keys. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it was a fantastic draft for the Colts. And I think that, gun to my head tonight, they're a strong candidate to win the AFC South.
Yeah, I would disagree with that as well. And I do think he's a good spot, good offensive line, all those things. Jalen Hurts, I wasn't really happy with the landing spot there. Kyle, do you have any hope for him?
You love him. He loves him.
Yeah, I mean, so do I have hope for him? Like, any time that I believe in a player's talent, I will always find a way to have hope for him. And I really do believe that he can be an above-average passer and, the closest thing to Lamar Jackson. I don't think he is quite that level of a rusher, but, he was rushing for, just a few hundred yards shy of Jackson's numbers. So I believe that he has that same level of dynamism in him. As a passer, he was actually graded like pretty well by places like PFF. His efficiency numbers were through the roof. Like it is, even if you say like he worked within a system, any smart team, which I believe the Eagles are, will do the best they can to replicate that system. Just for him, it's when that time arises. I think until then, it'd be fun to see him get in weird packages, but that means nothing for fantasy essentially. So
right, it turns him into Taysom Hill. But I do think it's interesting. Press Taylor, then the quarterback's coach, now the passing game coordinator, last year spoke at length saying, "Man, we're heading to an NFL where you have two legitimate passers on the field at any given time." And I think this is maybe the Eagles making a step in that direction. Again, not great for fantasy, as I watch Taysom Hill sit on the bench even the weeks he outscores Drew Brees, and they happen. And it's very frustrating. So let's get to the meat on the bone here, though. The Green Bay Packers traded up, get Jordan Love. First of all, quick survey. Kyle, slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers or just a smart move by a franchise securing its future?
I mean, some of both, but yeah, definitely slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers because, like he said before, that they had gone 15 years, and it's been his entire time with them since drafting a skill position player in the first round. I mean, I guess technically they did that. Obviously not what he meant. I think he has been like maligned by not having really much of any talent around him for the past few years. And just seemingly, like, he was talking about it before, he wanted that to happen, and they did not make it happen. And on top of that, in the second round, they go and draft, like Derrick Henry Light, a guy who is definitely not going to be catching a lot of passes from him at the NFL level. And then after that, they get, like, an H-back. Like, he was listed as a tight end, and if you just look at that, you would think maybe that's exciting for Aaron Rodgers to have that weapon. He's described as an H-back. I don't know if they want to run power run, if they literally just want to spite Aaron Rodgers. And I get the idea of drafting a quarterback to sit, like, I think the Jalen Hurts selection was good. I don't mind a team, like, even, like, with Lamar Jackson, I don't mind drafting a guy if you think you are going to sit him for a year or so, because if you can get a guy on a rookie contract, a quarterback on a rookie contract, it gives you so much value. Even if the first year he sits, the next 3 years, plus even that pseudo franchise tag extension, are all very valuable years to have. But one, Aaron Rodgers is definitely not going this year. His contract will not let it happen because they ate, I believe, like all the dead money or whatever. The next year, also a similar-ish situation, maybe not. So it seems like you were already having the value of Jordan Love, like the rookie contract scenario. And then on top of that, I didn't think he was really that good of a prospect at all. It's like they've already seemingly ended their win now window, but I don't think they massively improved the long-term outlook. So it's bad decision making, insulting to Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not even like a Rodgers stan. I think he's been a bit overrated for the past few years, like given their lack of I know he throws a lot of touchdowns, but that's about it. He doesn't run like a beautiful offense or anything. Throws the ball away a ton, which causes a lot of drives to end. But now I'm back on board supporting Aaron Rodgers.
So let me reframe the question a little bit for you, Justin. As a man who is a fan of the New England Patriots, they're a pretty good franchise, often win the championships. If you watch the Patriots come one game from going to the title, going to the Super Bowl, and saw all the glaring needs on their offense, and they had Tom Brady still, and they drafted Tom Brady's backup, how pissed would Tom Brady be?
Oh boy, I mean,
how pissed would you be?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm under the thinking that, a well-treated employee is a good employee. I don't know that you would want to do this to Aaron Rodgers. I read a stat the other day. He's thrown a touchdown pass to one first rounder in his career. And then you look at guys like Manning and so on and so forth. There's obviously a skewed relationship, kind of like Brady was here. I think he's going to be pissed off. I also think it's a real unorthodox way to motivate somebody. So what are you trying to do here? Are you trying to win? Are you trying to piss off the cornerstone of your franchise? So it's certainly interesting, and it caught us all by their draft was awful all around. I really don't get the logic in drafting Jordan Love round one. I don't get the ad with Dylan, and especially, we were talking earlier about how deep this wide receiver class is. You couldn't go out and get him any toys to play with outside Devontae Adams, who missed a couple games. I mean, it's really crazy, but I think it's another measure of this is a business. The end is probably coming to, nearing. for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. There's a new regime, and we've seen it time and time again. And Brett Favre went on to say, "Look, I played for the Vikings. I played for the Jets. I've told you guys, look, Montana went to the Chiefs, right? I thought Brady was out the door, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. It's just a hell of a way to motivate the guy that's carried you for the past 10 years.
2022, is he out, Justin?
I think he is. And again, I can attribute, you look at some of the game's greats, it's just the way it's gone outside of a couple of players. I mean, everybody's kind of sailed on. We just saw, look, Tom Brady can leave New England, and no one thought he was going to leave for the most part. It's the reality. It's the nature of the business. Money comes into play. New regimes come into town. And I think Aaron Rodgers has developed he's an arrogant guy. And I think the party's over. It's just a matter of where will he play. And I think that's when we talk about Newton and Winston over the last couple of weeks, like where are these guys going to go? Where is Aaron Rodgers going to play in 2022? It's these teams are getting better. They're getting franchise quarterbacks themselves.
I would say he's going to go to New England, but he'd have a hard time beating out Trevor Lawrence there. So, Kyle,
right.
Does he finish elsewhere? And if you feel free, if you want, take a stab at where I think it's a little too far out. But does he finish his career on another team?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of teams that are in.
It's hard.
I've got at least one. The Bears, because the Bears are going to be in quarterback purgatory for at least this year, maybe next year. And he is a being, I believe, of pure hatred. The only thing that fuels him to get up in the morning is wanting to crush his opponents and potentially his own wide receivers who don't do exactly what he wants them to do, a la Jeff Janis. But he is a being of pure hatred. And you have to think about teams that are with a middle of the road quarterback who will come to their senses at some point in the next year to 2 years. He could, the Bears could be in that horizon. Like you said, it's not really going to be the Patriots. It seems like if you were just projecting their roster, God, they're going to suck this year. They will get a guy like Trevor Lawrence, maybe Justin Fields. That puts them out of the
running. There's no way they don't get Trevor Lawrence, right? I mean, the Patriots, I don't care what it takes. If they have to murder every other team somehow in their sleep, they will end up with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
Bill's got a lot of pride. Well, you really think there's a tank job?
I don't think it's a tank job. They just suck. Even if it is or is not, their roster just is terrible.
Yeah, I know.
Resources and move up and
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That would be hysterical to watch Aaron Rodgers go to the Chicago Bears. I mean, just beautiful. As a fan who has no allegiance to either team, just a big F you. This is what you're going to do to me now. I'm going to shred you guys a couple times a year. Good stuff.
Interesting. That'd be some fun stuff. All right, then. So let's wrap it up for tonight. Again, everyone hang around. Tons of articles on the website. Some of them by Kyle that are actually really good that I like to read a lot by John Lyle. His are also really good. Pretty good piece by Adam Hall up there. A lot of breaking news, notice information. Evan Tarciano's up there. Maybe Justin will write something at some point. I don't know. He just likes to talk. But he does it so well, we keep him on the podcast because he makes it lively.
All right, beautiful closing, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. We'll be back probably within the next month. We'll start ramping up as we get into the summer months. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. For myself, for Bob, for Justin,